Welcome back to It's Hard to Talk About It. My name is Yael Bat-Shimon. And it's been a couple of weeks since I've recorded one of these videos for you guys. And I've had a lot of opportunity to think and to feel and to just consider the direction I want this to go in. And there's a lot to be upset at that's happening in our country right now. And I guess I want to speak to that. I want to speak to the feeling I keep having, and I'm sure many of you can relate to the feeling I'm having as I watch what our current administration is doing. The really, truly, just obviously racist, white supremacist, just violent, cruel, oppressive kinds of things that our current administration is doing. And the feeling I keep having, is I feel anger, I feel disgust, I feel sometimes a little, despairing. But I very much want to point at Trump and his supporters and the people who surround him. And I want to just castigate them. I just want to talk about how terrible they are and how racist they are. And I kind of want to turn that around and see if you guys might be able to do this with me. Turn it around in the sense of, I would like to, and I don't think I do this enough, but I would like to use Trump and the out loud, brazen, white supremacist racism and cruelty that they're displaying, that they're enacting, and the ways that they're actually just destroying lives. I like to use them as a mirror, because I think they are. I think what they are is, again, is a logical next step of the white supremacy and systemic racism that have always been part of our country and the history of our country, really at every step. And the more I really understand and read history, not the whitewashed history that is in most history books that I grew up reading, but the true history, the complete history with its ugly and its violence, along with all the stuff that I was also taught, and probably you learned, growing up in American schools. The more I understand, the more I really see that this country has never been a democracy. It has never been, because democracy means equal representation. It means the representation mirrors, is chosen by everybody who is represented. It means that everybody has a voice, everybody's voice, including the minority. That's an important part of democracy, is that the minority voice counts in a democracy. So the true history of our nation is that the majority of white folks have fought every step of the way, fought true democracy, have fought equality, racial equality, and justice. So it's not surprising, though it is devastating, it's not surprising that the current administration is also fighting true equality, is, in fact, can't even tolerate the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's actually become a swear word to them almost. And so it's not a surprise. And I think what they represent is us white folks, the rest of us. I think they're kind of on steroids, whiteness, white supremacy on steroids. And so what does that look like? I want to talk a little bit about some of the elements of that I'm sure you are seeing very, very clearly right now. There's white paranoia, part of white supremacy, a part of whiteness itself is paranoia. So Trump is saying, we're under attack. We have to suspend habeas corpus because there's an invasion. Now, what he's clearly saying is there's an invasion of this white nation by people of color who are, by definition, foreign and a threat. And I truly believe he believes that people who are not white are a threat to his and their idea of what America is supposed to be. America is supposed to be white. And, I think there are many of us, white folks who don't believe that. We don't actually think that. We don't think that America is under threat. We don't think we're being invaded. We don't think that these white South Africans are victims of possible genocide, or that they should be refugees or invited here and flown by private plane, chartered plane to this country. And at the same time, I do think that there are, it's an opportunity for the rest of us white folks who may not be as extreme, for us to still look in the mirror and say, in what ways do I feel paranoid and threatened around people of color? Because if you grew up in this country, you probably have moments like that. And they may be much more minor moments. It might be the moment where you're walking down the street and you see a person of color, and maybe you feel this, your shoulders go up a little bit. Maybe you don't make eye contact. Your eyes shift away quickly. Maybe you, there's the famous thing of the white woman clutching her purse more tightly. Maybe if you're in a car, you make sure the door is locked. So it is an element, I believe, for many of us, until we have begun this work, continued this work, are becoming awake and conscious of how white supremacy lives in our own bodies and our own minds through our socialization. So there's the white paranoia. There's that sense of threat. There's a sense of suspicion. There's, the idea that we deserve and we should expect as white people a certain level of comfort. And it's not okay for us to be uncomfortable. So I just kind of want to put that out there as a continuing opportunity for us as white people, for me as a white person, to stop pointing the finger at those racist white people, which I love to do, because it really does make me feel so much better about myself. But it isn't really helpful. I think it robs me of an opportunity to see parts of myself and work on those parts of myself that I want to deny. There's one other thing I wanted to say. A lot of the talk about white supremacy and white privilege And I think that's part of that kind of white paranoia, feeling suspicion, feeling of being under threat, and then then just the devastating violence and oppression that can come out of that, and right now are coming out of that at the highest levels. Those of us who are on this journey of taking responsibility, I think sometimes there's sort of a negative view of it, and I definitely subscribe to this as well at times, where to wake up, to become conscious, to take responsibility somehow means I'm going to be giving up my privilege. Like there's some loss there. There's some sense of loss that I'm going to give something up, that I won't have as many resources available to me if I give up my privilege, if I learn how to share and be in equality and with people of color. And so I want to suggest a different frame of mind for considering this. And the way I'm seeing it now is a much more, to me, a much more hopeful and inviting way to look at it, which is, and I really do feel this very deeply, that becoming racially conscious really is an opportunity to reclaim my full humanity as a white person. As long as, there are parts of myself that I have these instinctual, like deeply ingrained, deeply socialized ways of denying the harm, the devastating harm that white supremacy and systemic racism cause to people of color. That kind of numbing of myself, or that kind of denial, it really does cut me off from my own humanity. And it makes sense. I think for many of us, most of us, we don't have a lot of tolerance as white people for racial discomfort in general, perhaps, but especially for injustice, for oppression, for unfairness, for really sitting with the deep pain of oppression and injustice. And some of us may have some experiences of that. For example, on a personal level, I think there were moments, early in high school when I was coming out as a lesbian. I had some small inkling of an experience of what that might be like. I've also had experiences in my own life, in my childhood, that were, experiences of abuse that were very traumatic. And, abuse is kind of an oppression. So I feel like I don't want to say that as white people, we have no experience of that. But I think we need to take that experience and take what we've learned. I try to take what I've learned from that, in terms of my own experience being denied, my own experience being minimized, not having validation, having some moments of perhaps of discrimination or people projecting onto me. So again, that's very small, compared to, if we were to compare to, the experience, say, of a Black American, where it's a daily experience, in every setting all the time. But again, I think we can take that experience, and I try to take that experience to grow my empathy, to grow compassion, to grow openness, and to connect, really to connect. So I feel like I lost my train of thought, but really what I was wanting to say was that there is another way to look at this, which is to reclaim our own full humanity, which means feeling the pain and learning how to tolerate that. Learning what do I do with the guilt when I have that sense of guilt that so often comes, or sometimes shame, of anger, of outrage, of deep pain that can come with really allowing in the experience of people of color, or of a person of color, and knowing, becoming aware of the ways that I have caused harm, or the way that I collude or stay silent, all of those things. So learning what to do with those emotions, because it's easy to get stuck. I think many of us get stuck. I certainly have, in that kind of paralyzing guilt that then just becomes more about me. So learning, what do I do with those emotions? How do I learn to tolerate them, so that I can stay open? It's very hard to stay open. It's hard to stay awake as a white person. And I think we've all seen this. 2020, with the murder of George Floyd, there was a lot of white people got involved, and a lot of that momentum died off. It's very easy to do, just go back to sleep into the numbness. So again, an opportunity, I think. It's not so much about giving up something, as white people, as it is of we're really gaining something, again, our full humanity, gaining a real ability to connect with people who are different, who have different perspectives, different life experiences. And that really is something that enriches, and can help us get out of this kind of scarcity mindset that is so much part of white supremacy, that there aren't enough resources for everybody, and so we have to compete, and we have to dominate, and we have to abuse, and we have to use violence. There is another way, and part of the process of becoming conscious, and waking up, is, my hope is just to begin to imagine another way. Imagine, what does it mean? What would it mean to share resources? What would it mean to use my privilege to lift up a person of color? What would it mean to stand up? What would it mean to be in the lead of this fight? It's never been, white people have never been the primary drivers of any movement towards social justice. But it should be. It should be us. We're the ones who have the power. So we should be the ones in the lead. And I guess I'll just end with this, that I read somewhere recently, and it just struck me. It was such a very simple, obvious statement, but it really struck me, with its truth, that if a majority of white Americans wanted there to be racial equality, then we would have racial equality. Period. It's not that complicated. What's complicated is that it's complicated by the fact that most of us don't want it. And so we fight it, at every step of the way. So I'm going to leave it there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I appreciate your watching, appreciate your listening. I need your feedback. I need your comments, because that's what's going to help me know what direction to go, and what you're looking for, what your hopes are. What are your hopes? How do you see yourself in relation to what's going on and the fact that it's all happening because of the white people. White people are causing this intense, just cruelty that's happening in the world and in our country right now. So thank you. Please share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.